Well, hello and welcome once again to the DCL podcast, where we're inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly.
Well, welcome back to the DCL podcast, your podcast to help you cruise a little bit smarter. My name is Chris Bright, and I am in Burbank, California right now without a co-host on this episode. I am hosting it completely by myself because the two guests on our show today also are our co-hosts on the other episodes and normally. Steve and Christy, welcome.
You're so cute, Chris.
How you doing, Chris? I love it.
You're really making me do the heavy lifting today. Two guests in one episode, no co-host. What is this? Oh, well, you two, I just finished literally this morning listening to episode 293, the snippets episode. That thing was about 7 weeks long. It was such a long episode, and I lived for every minute of it. It's also fun to have the little do, and then the captain being like, Mayday, Mayday in the background. I'm like, that adds so much excitement to listening. It feels like you're really on the ship with everybody. So snippets are one of my favorite types of episode. And when Christy and I go on the Wish in a week, fingers crossed, knock on wood, all the things, we're going to do snippet episodes as well. So super excited. I love the snippet format.
I wonder if it's going to sound any different. I was listening to it when I was actually editing it, and there was that music in Preludes Lounge in the background going or whatever, So I'm curious if it's going to sound a little bit different being on the Wish versus the other ships. What are the background sounds going to be on that ship?
I mean, I guess we're about to find out. I guess. There's been that elusive, we don't talk about Bruno musical horn that no one has ever heard since Germany. So I feel like they're testing things out, but not exactly sure what the soundscape for the ship is. So I'm super curious to see how different it is. But we're here to talk about an amazing cruise that you all went on. The jealousy and the FOMO that I had from California was so real, but I knew that I would be able to get through it because I was going to get a whole hour of your time to talk about it as the host. So you all went on a cruise to the Greek Isles. Steve, you've had this cruise plan for a really long time, right?
Yeah, we booked it in 2020, the first one. And part of the reason why was just something different. We're always excited when Disney decides. They'd cruised to Greece, but it had been a long time since, I can't even remember when do you remember, Christy?
No,
it had been 10 or
time.
15 years ago since they cruised to Greece. But really the instigator that got it was something different. Anaway spent some time in the Greek Isles when she was in high school. And the ship at that time was going to stop in Hania, which is where she lived on her birthday. So it was kind of one of those things we have to book this cruise. And of course, 2020 canceled.
And 2021, did you even rebook it in 2021?
No, it's kind of funny because there was a lot of people that had t-shirts that said third time's a charm. So 2020 canceled, 2021 canceled. So 2022 finally went. We pivoted and booked Alaska. Of course, that canceled. So we can't say third time, but it was second time was a charm for us.
Okay. And so either way, this was in your mind as a cruise you were going to be going on for the past 3 years. Christy, I think you booked this cruise relatively last minute, right? Within 4 or 5 months of the sail date?
Yeah, I don't even think it was 5 months, but it was after the Wish got pushed back. So add a little bit of time to that. We were supposed to be on the Wish June 17th, which is our anniversary, our wedding anniversary. And when the Wish canceled, because they pushed back all those sailings, Dave and I are like, we're getting this 50% off coupon. Let's do something really cool with that. I don't even know how we got to the next step of let's go to Greece this summer, but that's how that worked out. So we then were going to book the 8-night and maybe did book the 8-night, but actually Anthony, friend of the show, talked me into booking this 9-night. I had to ask Steve permission because this was his cruise with his family and I did not want to intrude. And I am so glad I intruded.
Well, and famously, Steve said, absolutely not. I do not want to be on a cruise with you. And you booked it anyway, which is really bold.
That sounds like something I would do.
So I'm assuming Steve was like, do you? And then you booked it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And the first 2 days of the cruise, we didn't even see each other.
Well, and to your point, we didn't even do a snippet until like the seventh or eighth day, sixth or seventh day.
I was waiting. So, I was like, where's Christy? Was she on this ship?
Nobody cares about Christy. Christy we'll talk about this, but would hang out with Steve at happy hour, which didn't seem like the right time to do a snippet. And then we were running around and breakfast. Yeah. So it was just it was awesome.
It was a busy cruise. We use European cruises, as everybody kind of knows. You know, when you go on, well, not to say that there's not things to see in the Caribbean or anything like that, but for the most part, people going to Europe are going there because they want to see the ports. And so it's not so much about the time on the ship. And so you're off the ship quite a bit and you're busy going. So a little bit different mindset, I guess. And because of that, we didn't really see each other too much. Plus we had different dining, which that kind of throws things off too.
Right. Because on a 9-night cruise, did you have 8 ports, 7 ports?
We had 2 sea days.
Yeah. Okay. So 7 ports. 7 ports out of your 9 nights.
We had 6. 6
Yeah,
ports.
I was going to say.
Okay, 6
because
ports.
Of the first day and the last day.
Yeah. Right. That makes sense. Okay, so you had 6 ports. And for folks who are used to Caribbean cruises, it's not like that. You're not doing that many ports, especially that many ports that you want to get off and see because they're remote or not easily accessible.
Right. And active, like how often do you go to a Caribbean port if you're going to go and you like sit at a beach or you just hang out? These you're like running in the 8,000 degree days from place to place to place to place. It was a whole different beast.
Right. Because the Med is sort of like beautiful, calm oceans, but sort of like hot desert, almost islands. Is that right?
It wasn't quite deserty, but it was definitely warm the whole time down there in the Greek Isles.
Hot.
Yeah, it was. Right. It was like in the 90s and 100, close to 100 the day we were in Athens.
Ooh,
yeah, which is the worst city, I think, to be close to 100. Concrete jungle.
Okay, so we're going to take a little bit of a different approach because the snippet episodes is out. People can listen to it again. It's episode 293, and you all did a lot of just the like general cruise vibe topics. So we're going to touch a little bit on the normal stuff that we touch on a trip report, but this is really going to be a trip report where we talk a lot about the ports of a Greek Isle Mediterranean cruise and what you all did. So real quick, I know Christy had a huge adventure to actually make it there. You can hear all about that on the snippets episode, but I am curious, just from once you arrive at the port, what is international debarkation like?
Embarkation.
The international part was not a thing.
Okay.
Like that wasn't the difference. I think their testing mechanism and the building and the heat, like we didn't lose. It was not Port Canaveral by any stretch. It wasn't even Miami, which is a little bit of a different animal, right? If it was my first cruise, and I think this is important to say so somebody's prepared. If this was my first cruise on Disney Cruise Line or my first cruise in general, I don't know that I'd ever cruise again. Steve's beginning and mine were very different, but it was hot, it was unorganized, it was crowded, it was a free-for-all, nothing was working. You know, you registered for everything in advance, it wasn't showing up. So it just wasn't pleasant. But in theory, it would have worked just like boarding a cruise to Port Canaveral.
Well, there was 2 ships there, and so Celebrity was actually using the main port in Civitavecchia, which is the one that we sailed out of last time, which was brand new 4 years ago, and that's what we actually came back into. So there was that. We had the tent, and then the other thing that was really a foul up for it was that people needed to have the information out to be able to progress through the line, and if you didn't have that pre-printed, the Wi-Fi, and you didn't have cellular service, which a lot of people don't have when they go to Europe or don't want to pay for, the Wi-Fi was not working very well. So it took them forever to pull it up. So luckily Anthony was in front of me telling me what we needed, and we just had all that set up. So we passed like 200 people and different aspects of the line and got on pretty quickly.
Yeah, okay. We had everything printed and ready, but whatever the testing system didn't have us in it.
Yeah, you guys were lost for some reason.
Mail said we were and everything. It wasn't great. And then we got on board and then our room keys didn't work. And I was like, oh my God, I'm getting a new flight and getting out of here. It was just I'm like, is this seriously, after everything that it took to get here, how this trip is going to go? It needs to stop. It needs to go better right this second.
Meanwhile, we breezed through on the way in, and we're like, Christy's texting me, and we're like up having a drink of the day, enjoying ourselves because our room keys worked and we were already unpacked. So.
Oh my gosh. I mean, That's how it goes, though. Honestly, there are days when embarkation is like smooth sailing, and there are days when it's not. If you're a regular cruiser, you shouldn't expect embarkation to always just be the best, most easiest thing, no matter how often you're cruising, because there's always little hiccups here or there. And COVID's made that all much worse. Okay. So you got on the ship, you went to your rooms, both of you had verandas, I think that's true. Steve, you were on the love of your life, the Disney
Magic,
which, what was that? What was it like seeing her and knowing you were going to get to be on her for what?
9 days. Yeah, that was awesome. I mean, we love the smaller ships for all the different reasons. They're easy to get around. You feel like a little bit more intimate. Getting into the ports, there's less people getting onto and off. When you get to Santorini and you have to tender, you've got a lot less people to contend with there. And she's showing her age a little bit. I think Christy talked about it on her show with Anthony when they sailed out of Miami recently. But she's still, just spectacular overall. And it was great to be on there. Talking about the rooms really quick, I think Christy talked about it before that they tend to be a little bit bigger than the Dream class ships. So that was kind of a nice thing. And I would say, even though you are off the ship quite a bit, we really enjoyed having a balcony because you're in such different ports that a couple times or several of the times we didn't leave until 9:45, 10:45 in the morning. So it was nice to get up, have breakfast, come back and sit on your balcony and kind of enjoy the view. So if you can afford it, I think, unlike other cruises, I think having a balcony in Europe on this sailing was definitely well worth it, especially as we cruised the Isles, through all the different Greek Isles.
Yeah. And just through the Straits of Messina, that was to have a balcony. So I think in both directions, we had opportunities to have that sliding door of the balcony open and would just sit and hang out and, or get ready to go to dinner if it was that time of day, or get ready to start our day or whatever, if it was the middle of the day. So it is really awesome to have that land floating by you with your door open. Even if it's 1,000,000,000 degrees, by then the air is flowing a little bit on that ship. It doesn't seem like the air condition has figured out how to really turn off when the doors open. So we got a lot more airflow, and we had that door open a lot.
So did we. Just in it's so smooth out there in the Mediterranean that just you just want to be out there watching as you're sailing through the ocean there, or the different seas. So
those seas were flat. Chris,
yeah.
We would have zero motion problems. I almost didn't, except for the days that I knew we were going to be in the car a lot during the day. There were days I didn't need Dramamine in the middle. I
mean, that sounds like my type of cruise. I'll be honest. Right? Alaska was a dream for that, except for we sailed from Seward. So you're out in open ocean for a little while, but when you're on the inside passage, it's pretty smooth, glassy waters. And I've always we're doing the Mediterranean next summer with a group of friends, not Disney, because there is no way that I can convince all of my friends to book a Disney cruise, because they're going to be like, excuse me, no, I'm not paying all this extra money for Mickey. But we will sail in the Mediterranean. So I'm excited to hear all your thoughts too, because, a lot of times people do book a Disney cruise for Disney, but on these really port intensive types of cruises, and I was listening, it's interesting. I noticed that you all didn't even book Disney excursions a lot of times. You booked excursions outside of Disney some, and you booked the very rare Adventures by Christy and Dave. So I feel like there are a lot more customizable aspects to a really port intensive Mediterranean cruise that might make the Disney piece less of a focus for some folks, because, you're not necessarily there for the Disney product only. Okay. Was the very next day a port day?
No, that day we had a sea day, thank God.
Okay. So you did get a little bit of time to wiggle around the ship and see some stuff. Real quick, because it's me, what type of entertainment was different on a 9-night?
Well, they had 2 different performers come in, and Steve, can you talk to them?
So they had Tangled the Musical, and then they had Dreams, and then they had a new, or Believe. They had they had a new one, which I really wanted to go to, but nobody wanted to go to it. So we didn't go. But it got a lot. It's like Disney Sings or something like that. Just
it's Once Upon a Song.
Once Upon a Song. Okay. And it got a lot of really good reviews. So it'll be interesting to see if they continue that one.
And sadly, it wasn't on our TV because, those TV, so you can watch a lot of the main stage productions on your stateroom TV. We were pretty tired by nighttime. And I just, especially towards the end of the cruise, because then my time clock was flipping and stuff. And I didn't want to go sit in a theater to watch the shows, but I wanted to see the shows. So we would have been packing the night Once Upon a Sea song. Oh, not packing, but starting to kind of get stuff situated. Once Upon a Song was playing. I heard it was really good. I really wanted to see it, but I was kind of bummed it wasn't on the TV. So they record those at some point and then they play them. So I guess they hadn't recorded it yet.
I guess I'll just say this. The entertainment that is offered in the Caribbean and everything else is the same as what you're going to get over in the Mediterranean. And what we loved about it was the fact that it's kind of a little bit of a known. We ended up doing probably, even though we were doing the port excursions all day and pretty busy, we would pick one thing that we wanted to go to instead of trying to do everything like you try to do sometimes on the sea days in the in the Caribbean. This time it was kind of like, we just want to relax, enjoy happy hour with Christy and our friends, go to dinner, and then maybe we'll go see something afterwards. So as far as extra entertainment, they had 2 comedians on board. One was a ventriloquist. The ventriloquist was kind of meh. We didn't really mesh with him. But the other one, we went and saw the adult show down in Fathoms, and it was amazing. He was hilarious. And then they always have this same, we've seen him every single time we've been to Europe. They always have the same magician. He's from Spain, and I can never remember his name.
Hector Ruiz.
Yeah, and he is really good. So we really always enjoyed seeing Hector. So that was kind of the entertainment options. Pretty much all the same stuff, trivia and everything else. And then those are the main shows beyond the Disney productions.
They did show Lightyear in the main theater because it had come out the week before or something like that.
For those who don't know exactly what we're meaning about showing it in the main theater, they can actually like drop down a movie screen in front of that stage and show a movie in the main theater. So that's kind of cool. On our cruise, I don't even remember which ship it was, but a long time ago, we felt like it was a bit of a cop-out because they were like, and tonight we're going to show a recording of the Broadway production of Newsies. And we were like, oh, and we went and we had fun. But
that's why they do it.
But it is a way for them to sort of like stack an itinerary without always having live entertainment. That being said, I've noticed, especially maybe it's something that just feels more rare since COVID. So I'm noticing it more now, but Disney is also really good about atmospheric entertainment. So everywhere you go on the ship, there will be like people with strings and playing the piano and like, singing in the lounge and stuff like that. A lot of times in the atrium, there will be a singer around dinner time, things like that. So was that something that you found to be similar for this cruise?
Yeah, but I feel like the singers were in different lounges. Like the Promenade Lounge, is that one on the side, had one. What was funny, now that I think about it, the first night of this cruise had not one lick of entertainment the first day. Like there was nothing, including like in the atrium even. It was just this weird, I guess they were like, look, everybody's gonna be tired. It's the start of the cruise. We're just going to lean into it. And I was talking to somebody, I was like, did I miss what was happening today? They're like, no, it's just, there's nothing. Go figure out where everything's located on the ship. Have fun. But yeah, so who knows what was happening there, but there was no entertainment that first day.
I do feel like if there were ever to be a night without a lot of entertainment, that first night is the night because you're just so distracted by wanting to get your bearings on the ship. And so that makes sense to me, I guess.
It was nice. So they have brought back, and I think we've already talked about this, but they have brought back the captain's welcome aboard, which is usually the second night. So they have free drinks and stuff down in the lobby. Chrissy and I met up for that, and everybody kind of gets dressed up a little bit. It's kind of a semi-formal night, I think, that night. And then they also did bring back, for people that are gold or platinum for Castaway Club members, they brought back the kind of get together for that kind of a special welcome aboard that we went to see as well.
And that's only for cruises 5 nights or longer, right?
8.
Or 8. Okay.
Yeah. It's so like,
wow, not even 7 anymore.
I know it's kind of hard to find that one. But anyways, it was kind of fun. They had Captain Minnie out there. You could get a selfie with her or some pictures with her. And they kind of went over, that why they thanked us for coming back and sailing with Disney Cruise Line. And then they they showed us kind of some promo stuff from the Wish that everybody had already seen.
I know, we were hoping for at least any morsel of anything new. Fortunately, we made a lovely friend waiter who brought us lots of alcohol, or, the included drinks, and we enjoyed our time.
Well, it sounds like fun. Okay, so let's get to the bulk of the show today. So we're going to talk about each of these 6 ports. You can tell me if there is a port day where you were like, we don't need to talk a ton about that, but whatever details you want to share, I know you both did different things some of those days. So just give us a general overview. Chrisy, we'll start with you on the first port day. What was the first port and what did you do?
The first port day was Dubrovnik, Croatia. One of the things that I loved about Disney Cruise Line, and many of the premium cruise lines will offer this, is they'll actually offer transportation to the center of the town. I don't think we did not know ahead of time that this was going to happen, but they discussed it on the speaker. And to that point, let me just give a little tip. If you are going on a Mediterranean cruise and you hear the bing bong of we're going to make an announcement, you need to run over to open your door, because before you can get your TV to work to listen to whatever, unless you're in an open space, right? But if you're in your cabin, unless you can get your TV, you can't get your TV to work to play the announcement in your cabin quick enough. And they give away the most important information in like the first 30 seconds or minute of that announcement. And I actually tried to explain this to guest services at one point, and they definitely didn't understand what I said based upon another card that I had gotten from our cruise director, Tony from Spain. He's like, thank you for giving feedback, and we're going to give you disembarkation information, when we arrive back in Rome. And I'm like, that's not what I needed. So here's the point. It's about the information leaving the ship at the ports, and they give it in those bing bong messages where they just start talking. They tell you where your gangway is, which is important because there's 3 different elevators that it could be at on these ships. And it tells you if there's transportation to the city center, which you would never have known. And there wasn't like a big giant sign like transportation to the city center when you got off the ship. So you have to listen to those messages to get the information. What I was trying to explain to guest services is, look, you don't have a paper navigator anymore, which is where you would have given us all of this useful information in the olden days. Put it in the app. Like, I shouldn't have to mad dash and open my cabin door every time I hear a bing bong so that I can hear if there's transportation to the city center. So, and like how long it lasts and all of that information. So my tip is, unless they add stuff to the app, when you hear the bing bong, open your door and get the information. All of this to say, in Croatia, in Dubrovnik, which is a really cool, like, old town where there is an old town, that it's a walled city. So the Disney bus took us from the port to, which was about 15 or 20 minutes, to the walled city. My family just walked around. So we walked in and down. We actually saw the area where it looks like Steve's family's excursion took place, or at least started. We didn't stay long. So we walked around, we did the things, we saw what there was to see. We didn't buy anything. We didn't eat anything, but we were glad we did it.
And the premium cruise lines oftentimes will give you transportation to city centers if it is like more than a 15 or 20 minute walk. Like, I find that if to get to the city center is more than like a mile, they will oftentimes provide a shuttle. But you're right that you couldn't guarantee that, and they really should just advertise that that's part of it. But
the exception to this rule for this cruise was in Athens, which everything was way more than 15 minutes away. And Disney just said,
it's a big city. They had the Olympics.
Yeah, you can take a cab.
I mean, I guess I get it, but also totally. I mean, if you do the city center bus tour, all of that, you're still getting to see cities that you wouldn't normally get to see, and you're not adding an expense to your trip. I think we can talk about this at the end, but I'd love to hear your thoughts overall about how many port excursions you think is the sweet spot to book on a cruise like this. So we'll preview that later. Steve, it sounds like you and your family did book an excursion.
We ended up booking when the original booking window came open. There was still kind of, how are things going to work? Because at that point, you still kind of had to stay in the Disney bubble on cruises. And so we ended up booking a port excursion on each one of the ports except for Naples with Disney. Just because of that, we weren't sure. We wanted to make sure we had something booked in case they kept it that way. As it turned out, by the time this cruise happened, you could do whatever you want when you got there. But we wanted to kayak. We like getting out on the water, do something active, especially with the kids. So we did a really cool kayak tour, took the bus up there, and it was about a 4-hour kayak around the old town. And then for those who didn't want to go quite as far, they went straight to this beach and kind of cave area where they hung out for an hour or two with some snacks. For those of us that wanted to go a little longer, we ended up going all the way around this island. The guides were amazing. They gave us a lot of the history of Dubrovnik, oh man, I can't find the right word for it, but the war, Croatia? The Yugoslavian war took place. And so they gave us a lot of history of that because both of the guides, their dads had fought in it. And so that was kind of an interesting perspective to hear what had happened. And they were showing us like some different landmarks and stuff that where things had happened. So that was kind of fun. But then we went all the way around this island, spent some time on a beach, had a snack. Alex got to jump off this rock. It was like 20 or 30 feet in the air, which is crazy because he's our wild man and wanted to do it. And then we came back. And what was cool was we got back by 1 and we kind of planned this was we wanted to just wander around the city then. And Dubrovnik is beautiful. It's, to me, I say it is like the Magic Kingdom. It is like what the fantasy land truly is of the Magic Kingdom, but in reality with the different little alleyways and shops and the architecture and everything else. So we really enjoyed wandering around there, got some lunch and used the included shuttle back to the ship, which in Norwegian, we had to pay, I think, $20 each way when we went with Norwegian.
That's a lot.
It was nice to be able to have that with Disney. So it was a beautiful day. Loved Dubrovnik.
It was beautiful. And the beauty of cell phones nowadays is that if you have T-Mobile, their service works. Steve's family had T-Mobile, so they worked all the time. We could turn on our Verizon phone and just pay $10 for the day. And I believe that day I actually sent Steve a text. I said, hey, I know you were going to walk around. Instead of coming back to the ship, you are getting off of your tour right where the city bus drops off. So I was like, I'll explain where that bus picks you up if you want to, reach out. So it worked out that he figured out where to go. But the beauty of these cell phones is we were able to then communicate with each other and say, hey, let me save you 20 minutes of going back and forth. Just stay there.
Yeah, that was perfect. Instead of going back to the ship and then coming back and forth again. So yeah, I like the fact that I'm looking at the itineraries for next year. I like the fact that they added Dubrovnik, something just a little bit different besides just being in Greece the whole time. So kind of give you a little different flavor of a country that's pretty close and people love it. Croatia is a beautiful country, friendly people, food's amazing.
And I would literally never book a cruise thinking I want to go to Dubrovnik, but that's just because I've never heard a lot about it, right? Like I understand where it is, but that's about it. So awesome. Love that for you. That means we're now on day 3, right? Because your first day was a sea day. Where did you go in terms of your second port stop?
So this one, I'll take this one just real quick. This one was kind of a mess. We went to Kefalonia, which is with the port of Argostili. And the island is Kefalonia. And this is the first time the Magic had been there. It was kind of a rough day for the tour operators. They had a lot of tours that all went to the same place. Those places backed up because there were so many people there. And so there was a little bit of frustration from people that had booked those. So I guess the word to the wise going to Kefalonia next year, if they don't get it straightened out, known for some caves, which we went to go and see. And there's an abbey. I would probably think about maybe booking a private tour here, get off and go to those caves, make a beeline to the cave as soon as you can, be the first one there to beat all the Disney buses and what other bus tours are going to it. That way you'll get in and out in front of everybody. And then maybe spend some time later in the day in a nice little village having some food or down at the beach, because the buses all kind of converged on 2 different places at the same time. And it was all backed up. But I think that's kind of a learning experience. So it was beautiful what we got to see, but it was kind of a frustrating day overall.
And like we wanted to see, so both of our tours went to these caves. Mine only went to 1 cave. Yours went to 2, Steve. And I think you got to actually get out and walk around on the cave that starts with a D, and the cave that we were in. It was you take a boat into it. But the thing is, you're in this little rowboat for like 5 minutes, and it was beautiful and gorgeous. But I don't think I learned that much about what made the caves in the first place. like it wasn't discussed in our tour. And B, it was 5 minutes. And I definitely know we read the description of the Disney Cruise Line tour. It did not say that. So the one thing I would say with these tours is there wasn't a lot of clarity of how far things were, what sort of the timeline of different tours are, how long you'd be spending in certain areas. I definitely thought the highlight of this tour was, well, the highlight was the cave, right? But I thought we would have spent a lot more time there. And we were at that cave a very long time, but we were in the cave for 5 minutes. So, and like Steve said, it was a mess of people. And all of that was fine, right? It was all fine. It just, I think if we had known that that's how it was all going to go, that may have been helpful. We went to the monastery. Did you go to the monastery, Steve?
Yeah.
No. We don't really understand why we went to the monastery. Like, it was pretty. So you go way up this mountaintop, and so you get to see a ton, and it was beautiful. And I guess St. Andrew's Foot is in that monastery, which, okay, fine. I don't know why we were there. I do know that we were like the first bus there, and like 6 buses came after us. And I was real happy that we weren't still, needing to walk around with all the people. So like Steve said, there was a people problem where they have to sort some of the stuff out. But I agree. I would have mad dash to the caves, bought the entrance to the caves, do both of them right before all the people arrived. That would have been a better, I think, situation.
So they are going to Kefaloni again next year. So if you happen to be going next year on this, kind of, if you want to reach out to us, it would probably help you out a little bit, but that would be my recommendation. But the flip side of it, it's a lot like Alaska, Chris, going to the Greek Isles. Where the ships park, there's little towns right there. You walk right off. In Kefaloni, we were the only cruise ship in town, which was awesome. It was just beautiful that way. It wasn't like the rest of the Med where you park in an industrial port and then you're on a bus for, an hour or more to get to whatever you're going to see. It was kind of like pulling right into the little cities themselves, and basically 3 of them.
It's interesting because I feel like there are different strategies with port excursions, right? One strategy is do something adventurous, right? Like kayak in the ocean, or like scuba dive with whale sharks or something, right? Or when we were in Alaska, we did a rock climbing excursion, right? Then there are the historical or like geological tours where it's like you're seeing an important location in history, or you're seeing a type of environment and landmass you've never seen. And it seems, and I'll be completely honest, we sort of favor that kind when we're traveling outside of the Caribbean. In the Caribbean, we went on like a historical tour of, what's that? 7 Mile Beach and
Grand
Cayman. And all that they kept telling us was just like, it's the safest place. And I let my daughter go out at night. And I learned nothing about the history of that island or how it got to be that way. And I'm like, I would really love to hear history and stuff like that. So I feel like I would have picked the same tours you picked, right? Like, oh, let's go see a cool cave. Let's go see, an old town. But when Disney doesn't go there very often, it's hard for them to vet their tour operators and to know the exact flow of the day. So this is just a hot tip for anybody listening who's going to a port that is not a common port. Disney works out a lot of those things on multiple returns, and it's hard to work those things out when Disney only goes, once or twice a season. So, maybe a good call there to be cautious and really think about what it is you want to do. So good call outs.
And our tour operator was great, or not our tour operator, because the tour operator is whoever it was, but our actual tour guide was great. He was a firefighter that his mom owned the tour guide company or something, and happened to be in town for the weekend, and they needed another tour guide, and he was our tour guide. And he told us this. And I mean, he really was great. He gave us tons of information, we pulled up into one town. And that was the thing, is we just didn't even know, we went to these caves that lasted 5 minutes, but you were there for an hour and a half. And then we went to a town, and he's like, look, I'm not going to tell you to go buy from this X, Y, or Z bakery or my friend over here. Just go do what you want. We'll see you back in 45 minutes. Okay. And, because he didn't have any skin in the game because he's not a tour guide, but beautiful scenery. I think many of the buses stopped at this one, overlook to see this beach, and just amazingly beautiful scenery. But it was a very long day, which that was our strategy with these port adventures is like
long day, rest day.
When possible. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So what was next?
Next was the port of Hania, which we actually didn't park, kind of similar to Dubrovnik. We parked, I can't remember what, it was like a different side of the town or something like that. And then they ran buses, free shuttles into Hania. So if you wanted to go into Hania and see that, you could do that. And that is on the island of Crete.
Yes.
Ooh, we're getting some Greek mythology in.
Yes, exactly.
Christy, it sounds like if we're following your strategy, you may have had a slower day today.
Yeah, we did. And we knew the next two ports were going to be ports we were doing excursions on. So we opted to not, and there wasn't anything that felt right for us. So we took the included bus and went into the city. And actually this random bus had Wi-Fi. So if you are looking for that type of thing when you're in Europe and you don't have T-Mobile like Steve, check your bus to see if it has Wi-Fi. And we were all able to like tap in and get online. We walked, there is like an old lighthouse at the end. So I don't know, maybe like they take you in for 15 minutes or 20 minutes on this bus. And then a 15-minute or so walk, you are to the waterfront where there's an old lighthouse. There's a big street where people go shopping and eat, and it's a big tourist area. So we walked around there. We saw the lighthouse. We took pictures. It was beautiful. We took our bus back and went back to the ship.
I love that. And for those of you listening, it can be scary to go on these tours and not book an excursion because you're like, well, what will I do when I get there? And I don't know. But on our Alaska cruise, we didn't book a tour in Juneau. And that was one of our favorite days because we randomly decided to hike to the top of a mountain. And we would not have done that if we had booked a tour. So it was, I think if you're an adventurous thing, or if you are down to go on a unplanned day every so often, you can find some of the coolest types of things. And this is also another note. If all the excursions you wanted are sold out, don't fret. There's cool stuff once you get there. Like we ended up actually discovering when we were doing that Alaska thing that you could ride the shuttle down or the tramway, aerial tramway down for free. So we were like, oh, we just got to do this thing that a Disney excursion or a cruise excursion would have been like $60. So that's amazing. So I just would say, to Christy's point, if there's an included bus and all you're going to do is go to the town, maybe cool, you're going to get to learn about a lighthouse and like have some cool food. So that sounds fun. Steve, you and your family did book something in Crete?
Yeah, so this was the place where Anawake had spent time when she was in high school, the town just outside of the town of Hania. So she was pretty excited to get back here. Unfortunately, her host family was a little bit further away, so we didn't get to spend time with them. But one of the things that she wanted to do was there had at one point been a volcano there. When it erupted, it created this plains area that filled up with water. And then at some point, the water broke through the walls and formed these just amazing gorges that run from this upper plains area down to the ocean. And so people come from all over the world to do these hikes, and Disney offered an excursion to be able to do it. So it was the Imbros Gorge is the one that we went to. So we took a bus and had just an amazing guide. She was a naturalist, told us a lot about the history of Crete. You would have loved it, Chris, the flora, fauna, and talked about the volcano. And then we did a 8.2 kilometer, which is like 5-something mile hike down. It was all downhill, but I will tell you this, if you're thinking about doing it, definitely you need to wear good shoes and make sure that it can be challenging at times. But there were a couple of places where you went through like these little walkways where it almost looked like Petra, in Indiana Jones, The Last Crusade, when they're walking through those like kind of that walled gorge sort of, and then they come upon the lost city or whatever. There was like several places like that was just amazing and beautiful. And we ended up at a taverna at the very end, had lunch. They had that was included with it, wine and all the hummus and tzatziki and some amazing chicken and everything else. And so we had lunch there. And then because everybody's hot and sweaty, they took us down to the ocean, and we got to swim for about an hour next to this old ruins of a castle, which was really cool in and of itself, and then headed back. So that was a full day. That was pretty much, we left right when the ship got in, and we're back as we're probably one of the last buses back as well that day.
Never have I ever heard about an excursion that sounds more up my alley, because we love hiking. and we love hiking downhill. We also love swimming in the ocean. So that sounds amazing.
I think it was somebody in our Patreon group that said, this cruise has something for everybody. So you could take a 5-mile hike in the 100-degree day, or you can go walk and see a lighthouse.
Back to your point, Chris, all of these places, if you don't have something booked, the people are really friendly here. You're going to be able to speak English for the most part to get around. And the food is, who doesn't like barbecue chicken for the most part, as far as that goes? You're going to be able to find something if you want to, eat something out while you're off the ship too, that even I think our kids really enjoyed.
Totally. I'm super excited about this cruise next year, but I do think if I'm going to Europe, especially with a teenager, I'm probably going to lean hard on the ecological, historical type of stuff, because I want my kiddo to learn about the world, but a hike feels like the perfect mix of being in your body, doing something active, and then the tour guide being like, and this rabbit is extinct in most islands, but it lives here in this canyon. And I'm like, yes, show me that rabbit. So that's my vibe.
And that's the thing. You need to do a hike intermixed with the history lesson, because kids won't retain or handle.
Because it gets boring. Yeah. Especially if you're like, we're going to go to the Abbey in each city and see the different churches of Europe. I swear my kid would be like, never going on a cruise again. But if it's mixed with all this stuff, I feel like my kid would love it. And I bet a lot of kids would. The other thing is, even just listening to you be like, it was a great plane and it filled with water, and then the water broke through and made a canyon. I'm like, yes. That's why when we went to Yosemite and we drove up to this thing called Glacier Point, and I'm like, why was it called Glacier Point? I don't get it. And then you find out that the entire valley was formed by a glacier. You're like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And it helps you understand. I love anything that makes me feel small and insignificant in the universe. I want something that just makes me realize I am a blip on this timeline, and there is so much that came before me and that's going to come after me. I like things that make my mind expand like that. And it sounds like this is that type of thing. So I love that for you. And also you went to Crete. And also I bet Anna Wake was so cute, being like, I was on this island and these are the cool things that I've done. I feel like she was in her element, even though I didn't get to see her. I would have loved to see how happy she was to step foot back on that island.
Yeah, she was pointing out I remember this, and I remember maybe not a certain building, but just she remember the architecture and just kind of the way things looked. It kind of was all coming back to her. So, and to your point, our next port, when we go to it, that's why we wanted to do the hike, because then from there we do a lot of history in the next port and the last port.
Okay, so next port, we did some history. We'll start with you, Steve. What was the next port and what did you do?
So it was Athens. Anna and I had been to Athens before. And the thing that we really wanted to see was to be able to go up and see the Acropolis and with the kids. We were hoping to do a few more things. We ended up doing a private tour with Chris and the concierge and his family. And we got a little bit later start. And because of the crowds at the Acropolis, that ended up taking a huge chunk of the day. So unfortunately, we didn't get to stop by a couple of the other things we wanted to see. But I guess once again, pro tip: there was 4 ships in town that day. By the time we got there, I think 10:30. It was just a huge line. It's a choke point to get through the ticket booth to get up onto the Acropolis, and then once you're up there, you get a little bit more space then. But just going up and then coming back down with the crowds was huge choke points, and it was hot that day. So if you can get off early, once again, there was hop on, hop off buses. If you just want to do that, literally as you walked off the ship, and there was a line of taxis, which is what we had done when we'd been on a Norwegian cruise, and we just got off and got a taxi that day. And I'll let Chrisy talk about that, but that's a great way to do it. Just get off, jump in, get that taxi, beat the crowds, beat the buses again, get to the Acropolis, see it, and then move on.
I can't remember my junior high world history, but remind me, the Acropolis is where the Parthenon is?
Yes.
Okay. So we're talking ruins, no shade, on a very dry, hot day, surrounded by huge crowds. So that is a part of traveling and seeing the world in touristy cities that can be hard on people, right? Because it's everyone wants to do the same thing, and everyone wants to get that Tower of Pisa falling on them picture, and everybody wants, all of the same sort of experiences. And so, hot tip from Steve there, is try to go to those places during times when people won't be there, because it might make it a bit more pleasant and a bit less overwhelming.
I'll let Christy talk about the majority of it, because I think you guys got to do a lot more, and you guys did do the taxi thing. And I think that's a great option for people rather than booking a huge tour with a bus through Disney.
Yeah, because with the bus, there's so many people, right? And there's always that time. They say be back in 5 minutes, but really that means
be back in 20 minutes.
You don't even leave for 15 minutes because people aren't back yet. So we had actually booked a tour through Project Expedition, which is, I've talked about before, or at least shared the link. They are a private tour company. The thing that I like about them is they escrow the money so that they don't pay the tour operators until the people have gone on the tour. So like when 2020 happened, people can get all their money back because the tour operator is holding it still. We booked a private tour, but then the day before, we actually got an email, or maybe that night, in the morning, we got an email that our tour guide had COVID and had to cancel.
Cute.
So, right? Like, awesome. We actually tried. We saw Chris's tour guide when we left the ship, standing there holding up a sign for them. And we tried to ask if they had any other tour guides in their company that we could hire and be our tour guide for a day. He like called his company, and then they talked to Disney or something. And Disney's like, you can't do that. Like, you can't give them a tour. They have to book on board. Well, there were no private tours to book on board. So that wasn't a choice. Whatever, it was fine. I remembered what Steve said several times about Athens and how he just booked a cab for the day and it was lovely. And so we as a family had decided we're just going to get to the Acropolis and figure out the rest of our day once we get that out of the way. So we're going to go and do it. And so we went up to the cab line. We grabbed our cab. We loved our cab driver. And so we had booked him originally to drive us to the Acropolis. And so he was, and his driving was like the best European driver driving I'd ever seen in all of Europe. And his cab, while a little bit small, was clean, and he was well-spoken, and he taught us so much. Halfway through, we asked if we could hire him for the day, and he was agreeable. The rate was amazing. And so honestly, if people are interested in this type, like unreal, the price for the three of us to have this guy drive us around all day. I'll just say it was 150 euro for the entire day. And it was going to be like 30 euro maybe to drive us just to Athens. And it was only 150 for the whole day. And we were getting back from Athens back to the ship, because the ship is in like a port town, so outside of Athens. He taught us what to do about getting to the Acropolis and how to get in, which was amazing. He was just so good. And to that point, I have his information. We communicated like when we were out of his cab through WhatsApp. So if anybody, and he offered that if other people would like to hire him in advance, he would be happy to pre-set up to be your taxi for the day. So if somebody wants to reach out to me to get Nicholas's WhatsApp information, I'd be happy to share it. It was amazing. He was so great. And he was like a nice family man with his 3 little kids. And you could just like, he loved his job and he was so good at it. And we couldn't come up with enough money at the end to give him, because it was just like, he made Athens was the thing of this cruise we were the most excited about. And our tour got canceled, and we had a 9-year-old. And it was just a lot of, as Chris would say, stress, right? Like you get that email and you're just like stressed, like what is going to happen? And he just totally made the day for us. So we went to the Acropolis. We hired a guide, which ended up being slightly chaotic just because it was so crowded. But if you're going to hire a guide to do the Acropolis, because you have to be registered or whatever with them, they will usually buy your ticket. Our ticket would have been included with this guide had we hired them before we bought our tickets. So keep that in mind. And the guide taught us, once we got up and around, all the things about it all. So that was fantastic. After that, we went to, there used to be a king of Greece, and we went to the king's palace, and we got to see that. And we showed up at the exact time for the changing of the guards, which is this whole pomp and circumstance thing. It is amazing. They have these heavy shoes. There's a whole story behind it. It was kind of cool to watch. And then we went and saw the Olympic Stadium. And then we went to a restaurant back in the port town where nearer to our ship was located to have lunch on this waterside cafe. They handled my Greek allergy or my gluten-free allergy very well. And I actually printed off. So if anybody has any allergies, there are websites out there that you can print off what your allergy is in the language of the place you're going. So I printed off a little sheet. Would I just Google it? And like, there's a thing on there that says like, from the place I printed, do you want to donate? And I donate $5 every time I print it off because it's information I can't get on my own. This person's providing a service. And he even puts on there, if you have $5, give it, if you have money to donate, please donate. And if you don't, that's fine. Please enjoy this information. And I hope it helps. So I can certainly give the guy $5. So I do that. And it basically just said, obviously I can't have gluten. When my husband's salad came at the beginning of the meal, the waiter said, eat. And I'm just like, that's the kind of information I need to know this salad that doesn't look like it has gluten does, and your salad that is gluten-free remains gluten-free. And so I don't know, that to me was just really nice. It was just it was amazing. It was such a good day.
I think people think when they hear cab driver, you think you're going to get like your New York cabbie or something like that. No, these cab drivers that are there, they know their history. They do this in and out. These cruise ships come in and out. They do. This is how they make their money. And so it's not what you're thinking of when you think just like a regular cab driver that's going to get you from point A to point B. That was exactly our experience. But I think I mean, I'm not going to be an expert, but that was our experience for the first time. I've heard that from a lot of other people, and I think that they make their money doing that there. So, but
sure.
But to your point, if you're going to hire them for the day, maybe negotiate that price right at the beginning too, just so you know what you're getting, and they're used to it. That's what they do.
Yeah, and I wasn't going to commit to a day with a person that I didn't feel comfortable with. I just having my, tour guide, my private tour get canceled that morning. I just needed I just needed to feel comfortable, and I needed to
feel them out a little bit.
Feel them out. And my family, my son was going to be with us, and some of those European drivers are nuts. And so, I just wanted to be comfortable.
So the next port was the one that I was most excited about was Santorini. And I'm not sure about you, Christy, but we, as excited as we were to go and visit Santorini, we didn't know what to do. We're kind of like befuddled a little bit as trying to figure out what to do, because there's like so many different things that we wanted to do, and Disney didn't really offer one thing that was going to allow us to do it. So we ended up deciding to book something on the water this time. We ended up doing similar things, but our experiences were different.
Let's say really quick what Santorini, for people, that's the place with the white rooftops with the little blue paint or whatever. So when you see pictures of Greece, and even when Disney advertises a Greek Isles cruise, they always have that view of the white tops, buildings, amazing water. And so to help you picture what Santorini is.
So what makes Santorini kind of special too, it was a giant mountain, and I cannot even imagine what the blast was like when this thing blew up, because it's the caldera area. It's not like a caldera like Crater Lake where it's all contained anymore. Now it's open to the ocean. And so the different islands are actually part of the outer circle of that volcano. And then the ocean area, the caldera area, it's just massive, that island. Matter of fact, the Minoan people, which were the original people in Greece, that's the thought of why they disappeared, was when that actual explosion happened. It just kind of wiped them out. It was some serious ancient history there, but just beautiful area, beautiful islands. Those towns up there like Ia, Oia, and Fira, where we took the cable car up to, just spectacular.
Again, sounds amazing. I feel like the history of a giant volcano, but also you wouldn't know it was a volcano unless you were like a geologist or really high up in the air and being able to see it. I feel like that's amazing and very fun. It sounds like the cable car would take you to a high place, right? To be able to see it from a little bit of a different vantage point.
The port where you get off the tender, there's nothing there because you have to go up to the top of the mountain to where the things are, the cliffs. So you have to go north unless you're going out to sea. Those are your options.
just a couple of choke points there. It's a tender port, so that's gonna be an issue getting you over there. And then once you get, if you're gonna do everything on land, then you're gonna have to either you've got two choices. You can walk up, three choices. You can walk up to the top, you can ride a donkey up to the top, or you can take the cable car up to the top. So just think of a volcano, the really steep part on the inside. That is the face. That's where you're going up on top of that. And then as it drops off, and on the other side, that drops off to the sea, is kind of the other side of the island, which is where you guys took a bus to. But we ended up doing just a quick boat tour. We got off, the boat was right there. There's about 30 of us jumped on. They took us on a sail for about 2 hours around the caldera. Once it got hot enough, we pulled into a little cove and everybody got to jump out and swim, which was refreshing and nice. The boats were just kind of coming and going. They come in for about 30 minutes, everybody jump off and swim, and they get back on and they go. We came back about 1 o'clock, or about noon, I guess, is when we got back and dropped off at that little area. Took the cable car up, found a place for lunch. And here's another choke point. The cable car, from what we read, gets a huge line to get back down about 12:30 or 1:30. To really do anything, to Chrissy's point, most people are going up there, and it ended up being a long line in the heat. And so what we decided was, you know what? We're just going to go enjoy our lunch and we're going to walk back down. Now, it is tricky to walk back down because you get the donkeys going up and down, and it's fairly steep and it is a little bit slippery. So you want to have good shoes. But just having that plan made it made our lunch a lot better, because we could just enjoy the views, look out over the ships, look out over the caldera, some amazing food again, and not have to worry about standing in line for an hour and a half to get down on the cable car. So that's kind of how we spent our day. Chrisy, kind of a similar day.
Yeah, ours started later, and I'll go back a little bit. We wanted to do something on the water on this day. So I had tried to book actually a semi-private catamaran tour through Project Expedition, but the hours that our ship was in port, and because it was a tender port, they said it wouldn't have worked. They weren't going to be able to accommodate us. And let me also say that some of this Project Expedition not being able to accommodate us thing, I didn't decide what I wanted to do until a week or two before the cruise. Had I given it more time, I could have made what I wanted to have happened. But it was a week before the cruise, and I was emailing them, and it takes time, and there's time changes, and they have to contact the tour operator or their local guides to see who's going to do what. So I wasn't as sort of prepared. Is that the right word? But it was because we didn't really have anything going, but it was because of my own busyness and my lack of getting it done. So when Project Expedition couldn't take us on a boat tour, we still wanted to do one. And they could have taken us on one, but it would have been private and cost over $2,000, which for one quick second I considered. And my husband's like, no, are you crazy? And then I was like, yeah, that's a lot of money. That's the price of a regular cruise. So no to that. But I didn't I'd already done a big giant cruise of tour. I've already done a tour on a big boat or a big bus with all the people, and I didn't want to do that again. And so I went to the shore excursion desk and I asked for what tour gets me on a boat that doesn't have many people. And they were actually able to see in their group, yes, this tour only has a max of 25 people or 20 people or something like that. So we were able to book a much smaller shore excursion on a catamaran, where we actually went to a different, our tender actually took us to a different port spot. I don't even know how to describe that. And then we had to drive up the scary road up to the top of the mountain to then go across to get to the marina. Then our catamaran actually went all around the different volcanoes. We stopped to swim at 3 different spots. There was snorkeling included. There wasn't one thing to see during that snorkel trip, but at least we got to do it. My son thought he was going to snorkel for all of one hot second. And this other lady on the tour, there was probably only 15, less than 15 of us, maybe 12. This other lady said, "Oh, your son's going to go." I said, "No, he's not going in." And as soon as he gets towards the water and the mask, he's like, "Oh no, I'm not doing that." And I'm like, we thought that. So it was just so great. And then there were hot springs, and we got to jump in them with lots of warning. So actually I was the only one with in my family to go, because if you had any heart conditions, and we weren't sure if that meant lungs too, so we just didn't do it. If you were small, if you weren't a strong swimmer, You had to remove every piece of jewelry, which I never take off my watch and never take off my ring. And they're like, you have to take everything off. It's going to stain if you have blonde hair, it might discolor your hair. If you have like metal, like braces, it might discolor them. These hot springs, because of the lava and the whatever, and the sulfur in the water, intense. And actually the highlights in my hair are so much like more bleached. They were a much caramelier color, and now they're like bold. It was wild, and they weren't hot. It was quite cold. But I think if we went, there was a spot that you could get closer to where the hot springs were, but it would have been quite a swim, and we didn't have enough time. So we didn't have to go up the goat road or donkey road, as it were. We got to experience this island, and it was our favorite day. I mean, the Acropolis cannot be missed, in my opinion. And we are all very happy that we did it. And even running around Rome, right? Before our cruise, we didn't really talk about this, but seeing the sights is so important, can't be missed. But the Santorini day and that catamaran and that crew was so great. And they were so great with my son. I've actually tagged the name of them in my Instagram post. So if you wanted to know who it was, if you could book privately, you can look into that. They were so good. And it said on the shore excursion thing that they were giving us a snack. They made us a whole lunch with like this guy barbecued pork for like 2 hours for all of us. The most amazing Greek salad. And then there was pasta, there was bread, there was tzatziki. And then, they asked if anybody had allergies, and they actually let me get my food first so that I didn't have any cross contact. And just even like they made Blake a little tiny bowl of just tomatoes and cucumbers, like the most like simple things maybe, but they were just, they were so good. It was our favorite day.
I love that. Really I cannot believe that you swam in volcanic activity hot springs on the site of the largest volcanic eruption in the world or whatever. I have seen Dante's Peak. I know how this story ends. I am not okay with that. But your highlights.
Yeah, they had to rinse us off when we got off. They were like, you can't keep this poison water on you or something.
That is the opposite of something I would expect you to do. I can't believe you did that.
Felt like my family, one of us had to go. Blake couldn't go, and no kids were going. I think that one kid actually did go, but she was in there for like 1 second and came out.
This sounds like something Alex would do, not Christy.
Probably. I know, but
I will say those highlights are amazing because we meet up with you like for happy hour that night or the next day or something like that, and it really stood out. It was they popped.
Wow.
I can't wait for my colorist to see my hair this week. She's gonna be like, what did you do?
It's colored by a volcano. Don't worry. Yeah. I can't believe. But okay, so Santorini sounds like a total dream. I am jealous because it's not a very common cruise stop, at least not for Disney. And I don't know if we'll get to go there, but sounds amazing. And wait a minute. Am I correct in saying that was your last port, or was there one more?
One more, because we have to do the ABCD.
Oh, right. Okay. So we saved the best for last. This was Steve and his family decided to book a really disreputable, kind of shady cruise company called Adventures by Christy and Dave, ABCD. You cannot find reviews on TripAdvisor. I have tried because I am going on an ABCD Wish cruise next week, and I was really worried about it. But anyway, they showed pictures. They got off the ship, and I swear the person from ABCD was just holding up like a chicken scratch sign that had their names on it. It was really sad, but apparently it was fun. So Steve, tell us a little bit about how you chose this cruise or this excursion and what it was like.
We had been to Naples before. We visited Pompeii and had gone out to Sorrento. Sorrento is amazing. It's beautiful. That's where a ton of people go to. Some people will take a boat over to Capri. But one of the other sites, and Chrissy was talking about it, as we were getting closer, that she and Dave had kind of done this like excursion when they were there last time. And it sounded perfect for us to be able to go and see some ruins it's Herculaneum. I have a hard time saying that.
That
word.
is how you say it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Herculaneum, which is a smaller portion of the city that was destroyed in the eruption of Mount Vesuvius, the same time Pompeii was. So a little bit smaller, not as many people there. We were going to just go like you guys did and take the train there, enjoy, to be able to see some history with the kids kind of at our own pace for like an hour or so, and then head back and get some pizza and then back to the ship, because this is the last day. We're getting off the next day. So we wanted to come back and spend a good like half day on the ship as well, relaxing before we had to go home. So that sounded like the perfect day. And I guess I'll let Christy talk about how it unfolded a little bit, because I think it was perfect. It was fun. It was fun to spend time with you and your family.
It was super fun to spend time with you and your family. So I was the tour guide. That was probably the first mistake they made that day. The other issue was it was Sunday and maybe we took the wrong train. So my husband and I did this tour ourselves 11 years ago. It seemed easier than when we did it this time. So I felt very bad that Steve and his family were like in tow and we weren't sure about the train stations, but also things changed. Like the one big central train station of Naples wasn't there before, and it was huge and it was a little crazy at the beginning. Honestly, too, if you think about it, although we wouldn't fit in a regular cab, but you wonder, after we all paid for train tickets, was it still worth it to have taken the train?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Because it's kind of far.
It was fun. I mean, that was half the fun too, was just exploring and trying to figure out how to do it. It was an adventure of a day, which made it just exciting. It
was a billion degrees once again. And so that was part of the fun too, because we were all just sweaty and disgusting. It was so pleasant being with the Chrisy family for the day. It would just, Blake loves Alex so much. Poor Alex, because my little child talked his ear out. I think the entire day. And I told Wake and Steve during one of our happy hours before, I'm like, just be warned, my child does not stop talking. We got there and he would not stop talking. And so,
but eventually he ran out of words, because by the time we get to the pizza place, he was quiet. He was tired, like the rest of us,
hungry,
I think. So.
And exhausted. We walked a lot that day. It was an adventure. Oh, there was the crazy lady on the train after we ate our pizza, who was yelling at all of us in Italian. And it was a great, great adventure. And I highly recommend going to Herculaneum. Even if you want a real tour guide, hire one at the site. So they'll teach you all the things. Steve and Wake looked up a bunch of stuff online. We had looked up some stuff the day before. So I actually used the Rick Steves book that day and said, look, these are the little facts you need to know about this location. As part of my tour guiding, I wanted to give them the information, but I think it's way better. There was hardly any people there, like literally no people there. It is slightly closer than Pompeii. So then you get your pizza that much sooner.
Yeah, you can definitely do it yourself. There's a train. We took a subway to a train. You could actually just get off and take a train straight there, which would have been a little bit easier. But to your point, Pompeii is massive. I mean, you could spend days seeing Pompeii. Right. So you're not really going to be able to see all of Pompeii, but you're going to get all of that history that you can in Herculaneum that you are with Pompeii. And
it's the same. Like you only need to go and see so many bars or washrooms or things like that before you get to the next. And like, the rich people, because Herculaneum was apparently the wealthier of the towns that got destroyed by Mount Vesuvius. So you could see the beautiful plaster on the walls that were just still there this many years later. It is unreal. But I don't need to see 750 plastered buildings. 4 beautiful murals was like really good for me. So for me, it was perfect.
Well, I feel a little bit bad about the people in Herculaneum who nobody ever remembers. They got totally decimated by a volcano and no one will ever talk about them.
We talk about them because I went on them 11 years ago and I went to see them again now.
Well, there you go. I think that sounds great. I'm sure you also went to a gluten-friendly pizza place, which lovely. Steve, did you feel like it was quality pizza up to your non-gluten carrying?
Yeah. No, matter of fact, I think you just Googled it, right? Because we were going to go to a different place and then we ended up at a different part of the town and you just Googled it. And we found it that way. And it was really good.
Andrew and I actually did it. Andrew's amazing. Andrew's Steve's older son is amazing on the phone. And I was starting to get hungry and my focus was definitely struggling. So we figured out where we were getting off on this train and looked for a pizza. So what I did is I went to Google Maps on the map app and did gluten-free pizza near such and such station. And it was maybe 7 minutes away. And then Andrew used his Maps app to guide us to make it so we can make it there. And it had both gluten-containing pizza and gluten-free. The waiter was great. I used the Translate app on my cell phone, and there's so much English in all these places, but I wanted to make sure it was known that I medically had to eat gluten-free and that the rest of the table didn't. So I just threw it right in my Translate app, let the guy read it. He was like, I'm on it. Perfect. And I got gluten-free, a giant pizza. You guys can see it on my Instagram account at Packer Pixie Dust. And the rest of the gang ate gluten-containing pizza. And also, these pizzas were giant. And we definitely thought they would be small based on the price. And so the name is and the location is on my Instagram post. So if you decide to go there, share pizza because it was giant and amazing. I thought it was amazing. Did you think it was amazing, Steve?
Yep. It was a really good pizza. I loved it.
Yeah. And we got limoncello at the end, and we got this little like spritzer at the beginning, little refresher. It was a great little pizza and it got packed. So, and you know, it was packed after like 2:30. So I figure that's when the locals are coming.
That sounds amazing. I'm so glad that you had a wonderful day. Gives me a little bit more faith for my ABCD cruise coming up. Hopefully I can handle it. Yeah, I love that. That's so cute that you did that. And like, what a little like DCL podcast vibe that whole thing had. So I'm glad we could talk at length about that. All right. So that's your cruise. You did all those cool things. You had 2 sea days, 6 ports, 9 nights, and you left out of
Civitavecchia, which is
Civitavecchia, and returned to Civitavecchia, yes. Which is what, like an hour and a half, 2 hours outside of Rome, right?
Like an hour, I think.
Hour, okay. Of course, because of this trip had a little bit of a cursed travel vibe, Christy had travel issues getting home too. But at the end of the day, you arrived home. Do you have any final thoughts or things that you want to share? This episode's already 1 million minutes long. So any final thoughts or things that each of you want to share about your fabulous, amazing Greek Isle cruise?
I have one little comment. I had some food issues in the middle of the cruise, trying to eat gluten-free lunch upon returning to the ship after some port days. Gluten-free food always takes longer. That's to be expected, especially if it's a typical eating time. With DCL at 3:00, when you get back to the ship, there is only quick service available if that's the time you're returning. The quick service lines were very long on one particular day. So I finally get to the front of like the sandwich making line and get to talk to a head waiter to put in an order. And I just said, what is the quickest? Like, let's just take some prosciutto and tomatoes or something, or cheese, throw it on a plate. There's that Greek salad sandwich. Can we throw some of that on a plate if it's gluten-free? Just like, I'm really quite hungry at this point. It took 45 minutes to get that particular bit of food. And my blood sugar dropped, which for me meant that my whole day, like I start shaking, I feel ill the whole rest of the day. The thing is that I don't know if there's less staff for allergies or if it's the middle of the day, there's less staff, but it was a problem. I don't know that I could have really done anything different. Like I could have tried to find food in those ports, but one of our tours, that wasn't even a possibility. There's only so many granola bars, right? You can eat. So that was the only time I ever had issues. But when I came to dinner, I went to my head waiter, who was like a manager. And I love it when my head waiters are managers. I walked in and he goes, I said, I'd like to talk to you. He goes, oh, I know. And like walked us to the table and like had a bottle of champagne or Prosecco, which the platinum gift Prosecco is amazing. And it is my favorite. And I may not have been super gracious when Wake asked for a glass of my Prosecco because I was like, I want all of this Prosecco. That was the same Prosecco he gave me that night at dinner. And he talked to people like the executive chef of the entire ship at one point came out to say they were sorry to me. They assigned me a chef apparently somewhere in the kitchen so that I didn't have this problem going forward. It was a conversation that had to happen. Nobody could understand why it took 1 hour for me to be served any food at all, which I wasn't actually served after 1 hour, any food. And it was finally when I left. No one could answer that question. But if you have food allergies and you are traveling in Europe, you just have to, I guess, be prepared for that, because I don't know what their problem was, but they had a hard time with midday food on the ship. But I got pretty well taken care of after that, which is kind of sad that had to be that way. But
well, I'm glad that it worked out in the end. And I'm sorry that it wasn't that easy to get resolved at the beginning. I know that can be stressful, especially when you're traveling. Steve, any final events or things that you want to talk about from the cruise?
No, I just things that we've always said before is just because it's such a port intensive, being over in Europe, kind of know your family, plan your days accordingly, don't try and pack everything in. If you do that, you're going to just have a magical time seeing a lot of history, seeing a lot of places of the world that a lot of people don't unfortunately get to go and see. So I would just kind of recommend that. To that point, we came back every day after the port excursion, rode the aqueduct to cool off. Anawake and I would go get a drink and hang out by Signals and watch the sail away. We didn't feel like we needed to come back and do trivia or do anything else. We'd pick maybe one thing that night, either before or after dinner, and then just go on to our next day. Had breakfast with Christy and Anthony and their families, and made it more, let's go see Europe and then relax while we're on the ship. I guess the last thing I'll say also is that if you're a Rick Steves fan, he does have a book called Med Cruise Ports, and it covers a lot of the ports through the Mediterranean cruises and also through the Greek Isles and up into Northern Europe as well. I think it might be a separate one for Northern Europe. So it's kind of a good resource for you to use if you want to investigate just doing things on your own in the port.
If you have an opportunity to take one of these cruises with friends, man, I think the cruise would have been great either way, right? Because they're great ports, great cruise line. But having all these friends, like Anthony had one of his agents from his office and her family on board who I had met before, really enjoyed. We all went to Palo one night for dinner, and just, we would see them around the ship, and we started doing this happy hour thing before our dinner towards the end of the cruise. And the breakfast in the morning with Steve and his family, it really made the cruise just that much better. Cruising with friends is where it's at. So I'm a big fan.
Definitely. I'm excited for you guys to be on the Wish here in just a week or less than a week.
But then in a couple of weeks, we have, our Wish cruise with friends. We have 1 million of us. I'm very excited about that. I just think it's going to be so much fun. I just recently hung out with Lake and Katie, who's going to be on that Wish cruise too. And we're all just pumped, and it's going to be so much fun.
Normally we do the what's next for us, but you all know what's next for us. We have a pre-inaugural sailing Wish cruise coming up that I am tagging along with Christy's family. We have the 3 of us on a Wish sailing, which is like the second paid cruise for the Wish, maybe third. And we're going to do a ton of trip reports about that. So we're really excited to just share our summers with everybody. But you two, this was fun. I loved being able to host without a co-host and hear your amazing stories. I'm already thinking about what I'm going to do next year when I'm in Greece or wherever we end up going in the Med, somewhere in the Med. So I can't wait. And thanks for sharing your family's vacations with us.
Well, thanks for hosting us, Chris, and being in the hot seat today. We really do appreciate it.
My pleasure. All right, everybody. Till next time.
Bye.
Well, that's going to wrap up our show today. Once again, I really want to thank Chris for hosting this episode with Christy and I. And I know it was kind of a longer episode, but 9-night cruises, I guess, lead to just a lot of things to talk about. And if you and your family have a chance to go over to Greece either later this summer or have booked something over there next year, you will not be disappointed. Just some magical islands to visit, some out-of-the-way places that not everybody gets to go to, very friendly people, and just amazing food. Well, if you enjoyed this podcast and it's helped you travel, we sure would appreciate it if you'd pass it on to others. That helps us get the word out in the podcasting community about us. Also, if you have time to go over to iTunes and leave us a review, once again, that helps us get a little bit better known in the podcasting, the Disney podcasting, cruising podcasting community, and just helps other people find the show. We appreciate each and every one of you who do that. If you'd like to support our show, we'd like to give a huge shout out to all our Patreon supporters who do that each and every week. They bring this show to you ad-free. You can go over to patreon.com/DTL podcast and find out all the information there. Well, between now and our next show, if you are headed out on a Disney cruise down to Walt Disney World Disneyland, out with Adventures by Disney, on behalf of myself, Steve, Christy, and Chris, all of us here at the DCL Podcast, we want to wish you to be well, enjoy time with family and friends, and we'll see you next time on the DCL Podcast.
The DCL Podcast is not affiliated with the Disney Cruise Line, Walt Disney Company, Adventures by Disney, or Run Disney. All of the opinions expressed on our shows are those of the hosts and the guests who appear on the show. If you have any questions about any of these products, please contact the Walt Disney Company.